Talia Faraj Johnson. Governor Charlie Crist issues an executive order approving issuance of up to $571 million in affordable housing bonds. This will bring assistance to first-time homebuyers with low and moderate incomes. And is Senator John McCain losing his foothold in the state? All that and more on Power Play with our guests, Steve Bosquet, the Capitol Bureau Chief of the St. Pete Times, and Paul Fleming, the State Editor of Gannett News Service. Welcome, gentlemen. Let's just jump right into it. Let's talk about what Governor Crist did this week. Signed an executive order. He
has. Governor Crist, this is, in some senses, old news. It's money that came from the federal government, was announced a couple weeks ago. But his role is as optimist-in-chief, a role he's very suited for and does a good job to say the economy is going to turn around, real estate is going to bounce back in Florida, and it's important for him to take that view. Now, what's going to happen in reality?
Yeah, I don't hear the hammers and nails yet from these new housing developments, and we're not going to see any tangible evidence of it for a while. It is more money coming in, and in fact, Charlie Crist trots out the Fighting for Florida placard sign on the lectern, which is what? Which is the theme song, or the theme of his campaign bus tour in 2006. So to me, it had a definite, almost a re-election campaign look to it.
But gentlemen, we're looking at $1 billion, infusing $1 billion into the housing market, you know, whether it's for people who are, you know, whose homes have been foreclosed or people who are just trying to get into homes for the first time.
There are elements that will swing some hammers in this, but when you take $1 billion, divide it by 67, then you start getting into smaller amounts, and when you look at what the enormity of the housing situation is in Florida, I don't want to suggest that it's only a dent, but there's an element of it that it's a dent.
The thing is, there's more bad budget news coming. Charlie Crist knows this. There's a revenue estimating conference in November, right after the election. Okay. There's going to be more budget cuts. So this is a way of shoring up that future bad news.
Will this make a difference?
Well, frankly, no.
The debates, first set of vice presidential debates, probably the last. Your thoughts? How will that affect what's going on in the state of Florida? Governor Palin plans to visit.
Sure.
Will that make a difference, especially since we've seen that Senator McCain has been slipping in the polls?
Yeah, I think that Sarah Palin's performance on the debate definitely way exceeded the expectations. And the timing for Florida couldn't be better from the Republican perspective. Sarah Palin is coming to Florida for 2 days next week. They're going to raise a mountain of money, and she's got 4 events in 4 or 5 different media markets. She's going to get a tremendous amount of attention in the state next week.
You betcha, Steve. That is for sure.
Doggone it.
And it really was quite a performance. And again, to be frank, content I don't think matters in this instance. And it's not just an expectation game. She performed very well, of course, relative to some previous performances.
But how will this affect what's going on in the state?
Well, Governor Crist, before the debate, said it's 35 days of the election at the time it was. That's true. It remains, there's still time before the election. I suspect we'll see another bump because of the vice presidential debate, but that's going to return to earth, I think.
McCain's success or failure in Florida is still tied to some extent to Charlie Crist. Let's see how visible Charlie Crist is out there from the McCain-Palin ticket in the next few weeks.
But we've seen this shift in the last 10 days from a substantial McCain lead in the polls to now a small Obama lead in the Florida polls. Senator McCain is moving operations out of Michigan in part to Florida and other states that he shouldn't be fighting for. At least that was the conventional wisdom. Do you think that's so, Steve?
I do, and I think keep one other thing in mind. Monday's the deadline to register to vote in this election. Mm-hmm. There's been a huge late surge of voter registration in a lot of areas where there are a lot of Democratic voters.
And then a few challenges, concerns. The Republican Party of Florida sort of scrambled a meeting. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Jim Greer gets on the phone and summons about 24 McCain people to the office of the Republican Party headquarters, and by various accounts said to these folks, look, we've got to be doing a better job. It's crunch time. We're coming down to the end. There was a very negative reverberation from that. The McCain people really don't appreciate Jim Greer telling them how to do things. A lot of the McCain shots are being called out of D.C. We know that. They're not a self-sustaining operation in Florida. And I think there's a rift, there's tension between the Republican Party and the McCain operation for sure.
Yeah, and you don't want to see that at this point in the campaign.
And moving along quickly to our Power Play of the Week.
My Power Play of the Week has to go to Jim Greer, the guy who convened this meeting of big McCain's operatives and his own people. And why? Because Jim Greer is trying to position himself so that if McCain goes down the chute, he can say it wasn't his fault. And if McCain succeeds, Greer can say, I provided the timely advice at the timely, appropriate time.
Paul?
I'll pick a smaller one, but Dr. Greg Strand, a veterinarian from Pensacola, renews his challenge to tax increment financing procedures in the state and takes that, asks the Supreme Court to hear again the whipsaw ruling that they've made in that. And we'll see how that turns out.
Paul and Steve, thank you so much for joining us on the show. And to our viewers, thank you for watching another episode of Power Play. For the latest in all your political news, please visit Safety Review. Thank you.